Hi, welcome to this demo of Spectrum Protect for virtual environments multi-server support for VMware. I'm going to give you a demo of the new 818 feature where we can now allow the VMware vCenter to be able to backup, restore, and report functionality in the plugin for multiple Spectrum Protect backup servers. This not only allows for a simplified installation where you can use a single GUI to support multiple backup servers, but it also increases the plugin capabilities, including being able to add in this additional backup servers. This is data center centric, so each data center can only be associated with a single backup server. And finally, the web GUI, which is our legacy GUI, is going to be kept as it is. So we will just show one default backup server in there. Multiple servers will not show up in that legacy GUI. It's very easy to add in additional Spectrum Protect servers. You can either do that after you've gone through the initial configuration wizard and it pops you into the vCenter, or if you already have Spectrum Protect server defined, you can add in another one directly from the vSphere vCenter plugin. And I'm going to be walking through these steps. I won't be doing the original configuration. I'll be starting after you log into the vCenter, and from there we'll go ahead and add in the backup servers, add in the data center associations, and then add in the data movers. And then finally, I'll go through and show you some of the other things you can do with editing existing Spectrum Protect servers, as well as drilling down and looking at the information that's being collected on these different servers. So let's go ahead and get started. First, log on to the VMware vCenter. And the first time you've installed this plugin, it might not immediately show up. In fact, you might have to log off and log back on again. Under Menu, if you go into IBM Spectrum Protect, underneath the Configure tab, you'll see different sections, including connections, backup servers, and so forth. We're first of all going to go ahead and go into the Backup Server tab. Notice the icon in front of our default backup server. This just designated it as the Spectrum Protect default server. This server cannot be deleted, so if you did try to delete it, you would get this error because it is the default server. Next, if we go into the data center management, you'll see the data center that we associated with it when we did the setup wizard. Likewise for the data mover, this was the data mover we associated with that Spectrum Protect server. If we go into schedules, a default schedule was created because a data mover and a data center were associated with it. However, no objects have been assigned to this schedule, so you would have to add in some tags and get some objects assigned in order for backups to occur for this schedule. Finally, if you look at the mount proxies, we do have a Windows mount proxy set up here, but not a Linux one. Okay, and with that, let's go ahead and add in a second Spectrum Protect server by clicking on the plus button. You will need to enter the Spectrum Protect server's address as well as the administrator port. You will also need the Spectrum Protect server's administrator ID and that Spectrum Protect admin password. Go ahead and click Next. Now you'll see the REST certification coming up because we are adding the Spectrum Protect server via the REST API. So go ahead and click Accept on this REST certificate. We are using the vCenter login to authenticate with the REST API. And once we do that, you will see the server certificate for the Spectrum Protect backup server showing up. Go ahead and accept that certificate. Next, you'll need to choose the domain that you want the backups to be associated with and the prefix that you want each of the backup nodes to have in front of their name. So we've chosen the standard domain and we've entered a prefix. Do note that if you change the domain, it will change the policies and the management classes and descriptions associated with that. Go ahead and click Next. Okay, this is just a summary of what we're creating, so you can then go ahead and click Finish. So now it's going through using the REST API to create a vCenter and a VMCLI node, and it's saving this information to the backup server XML file, which is going to hold sections for each of the backup servers that we create. This screen gives you recommendations on the next steps you should do. So we're going to go ahead and add a data center association by clicking on the button below. So from this screen, we can now add a data center association. We can pick what data center we want to utilize with this Spectrum Protect server. So we're going to go ahead and choose the Dora data center. Click on Create Association. Next, choose which Spectrum Protect server you want to associate that data center with. Notice from the drop-down, you can choose any of them that show up here. And as you choose a different server, the data center node name will change accordingly with the naming convention. You can also customize the naming convention for the node names by simply typing in whatever you want there. Next, you'll need to enter a Spectrum Protect server admin ID as well as that administrator password, and then go ahead and click Add. This will create the data center node as well as a proxy relationship between the vCenter and the VMCLI node. It does not automatically add in a data mover, and the reason for this is because we want you to choose the data mover that's closest to the data center and not necessarily the one that's simply on this GUI host. So go ahead and click on Add Data Mover. Before running the Data Mover wizard, you do need to make sure on the remote machine that you have installed the VE install package and chosen the Data Mover and Mount Proxy underneath the advanced options of the installers. The Add Data Mover wizard will perform all the configuration steps like setting up the nodes on the Spectrum Protect server, creating the Data Mover options file, and the Data Mover services. However, you have to have first installed the VE install package on that remote machine. To create a new data mover, click on the plus button. This will bring up the current data centers that we have defined, and as you change the selection of your data centers, you'll see that the data mover name below also changes. So we'll go ahead and choose the Dora data center, and then we will also enter the data mover host name. We'll enter that here. And then finally, we need to enter the vCenter user and the vCenter password. And after that, we'll go ahead and click Add. We're able to install remote Linux and Windows data movers because we are using the REST interface to do that. Go ahead and read the summary of the steps we've taken, and now you can go ahead and click Close, and we will take a look at the schedule. A new default schedule will have been created, and this happens because a default data center and data mover association was created. However, no objects will be associated with this schedule, and so you do have to set tags in order to have the clients backed up. The final thing to look at in this configuration is the mount proxies. So if we click on Mount Proxies, you'll see that we have not created any mount proxy for this particular server. You would have to do that as a manual step if you did want to enable file level restores. Okay, now that we've added in this second backup server, created a data center, data mover, schedules, and looked at the mount points associated with it, another thing you can do with it is edit it. So if you click on that backup server and click on the Edit button, you can do things like change the server port or change the Spectrum Protect administrator's password directly from this screen. Another thing to note underneath the status field, if it says verified connection, then it has been able to connect with the VMCLI node. You can also select the server and then click on the test connection button, and that will go out and try and reconnect that node with the server. Something else you can do on this screen is delete a Spectrum Protect server. However, you can only delete the second or additional connections, not the default server. If you do delete the server, it doesn't actually remove any nodes or any data. It just removes the server from the user interface. So if you do go and add back in that Spectrum Protect server with the same prefix, you'll be able to see all of the data that was previously backed up to it. Likewise, if you were to go into the data center and choose to delete off an association between a data center, it would delete off the user interface reference to that and some of the proxy associations, but it's not deleting the data. If you clicked Create Association to re-add back in that data center association, and you gave it the same names as previously, you will get a warning that the nodes already exist, and go ahead and accept this. But then you'll be able to add that back in, and any backed up data or data associated with that will still be present. Another thing we support is changing the data center name. So for instance, if we took this Austin, DC data center and went and did a rename on it and instead called it Boston and went ahead and saved that. Now if we go and look under the Spectrum Protect and went into the Configure tab and went under the Data Center Management, you will now see we have Boston. However, notice that the data center node name does remain the original one. We don't have the ability to change that. Now that we've walked through configuring an additional Spectrum Protect server, let's take a look at a different system that already has data backed up to it. First of all, if you go into IBM Spectrum Protect and then you go into Monitor, you'll immediately notice that we have information coming up from all of the servers that we are monitoring. You can add in a column that shows you specifically which Spectrum Protect server it's associated with, and then you can click on that column header and sort by the server names. Or for instance, you can sort by which schedules have been missed. There are different statuses out there. Let's go ahead and take a look at a missed schedule. If you click on the error code, it'll give you information about why that failed. And then you can also go ahead and download the complete log from any of the data movers that are associated with this vCenter. If we leave the monitoring and go back into the configure section and take a look at the schedules, you'll now see these multiple schedules on this machine that have different objects associated with them and that are being backed up. If we go to the data center level, in this case into Dora, and look at Monitor, and then here inside of the IBM Spectrum Protect portion, we will see the object list and anything that's at risk. If you click on Configure and IBM Spectrum Protect, this is the level that you can set the different tags at and see the individual schedules. So this is where you can put the virtual machines under protection by selecting the schedule for a data center or other containers like the host cluster or folder. We'll go ahead and cancel out of that. Now, if you did want to do an individual backup, you could expand the data center and choose an individual virtual machine. From here, you could choose to do an ad hoc backup of that individual machine. And if you did have multiple data movers associated with it, you could choose the one you wanted to use. Likewise, you could also do a restore by going into Restores. It will automatically bring up the relevant data mover and show the different restore points. One thing to notice is if you are doing either the instant access or instant restore, if you have a Windows data mover, then you won't need a mount proxy. So in summary, I've showed you how in Spectrum Protect for virtual environments version 8.1.8, you can now add multiple Spectrum Protect servers to the VMware vCenter plugin to be monitored, backed up, or restored. Thank you very much.